From the banks of Scotland to the California coast.
On May 15th, 1903, John Muir went on a camping trip with President Theodore Roosevelt that changed the national parks forever. Muir used his insight, passion for nature, and leadership to convince Mr. Roosevelt to start the National Park Service, create wildlife sanctuaries, and initiate national parks all around the country. This event is the most important date in the history of preservation to ever take place. John Muir was born on April 21st, 1838, in Dunbar, Scotland. He immigrated to Wisconsin when he was 11 years old. As a child, John Muir was always attracted to the forests. His father raised him to think that nature was an impure, dangerous place. Muir felt different than his father. Muir felt that everything was linked. Here's a quote from John Muir about how he saw the universe.
When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe.
Muir was a talented man. He had many interests, and one of them was inventing. He took all his inventions to a fair, and they were all a hit. They urged John Muir to go into inventing, and John did. He excelled at his work, but something was missing. One day, tragedy struck. Muir's eye was blinded by a sharp metal piece. He feared he would never see the beauty of nature again. Muir fell into a dark spiral. He was nothing without the wilderness. One day his eye healed and he went on a 1,000-mile walk through the country. One day he discovered Yosemite, and then another world opened up. As Muir wandered the Sierras, he wrote this.
Don't we know we're running out of time? Are we all such fools to rob this world blind? Don't we know?
Another glorious Sierra day in which one seems to be dissolved and absorbed, sent pushing onward, we know not where. Life seems neither long or short, and we take no more heed to save time or to make haste than the trees and stars. This is true freedom, a good practical sort of immortality.
Muir had more passion for nature than any other naturalist of his time. He would spend months wandering in the peaceful solitude of Yosemite Valley, living off the land and getting in touch with nature. In his writings, Muir stated,
Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to the body and soul alike.
Theodore Roosevelt, being a naturalist like John Muir was, he wanted to experience the Sierra Valley with Muir. So he called upon him. Muir was very hesitant at first and then accepted. The trip lasted 5 days. 5 days of talking, hiking, and enjoying the beauty of the Sierras.
The forest moved the earth to build the mines.
Muir and Roosevelt would sleep under trees. Theodore Roosevelt slept on 50 blankets piled high. John Muir slept on the fresh green pine needles of the Mariposa Grove. Although this trip was a light-hearted camping trip, John Muir had more than that in mind. He wanted the president to keep Yosemite wild forever and let our children enjoy it. He convinced Theodore Roosevelt to start to preserve land forever.
If only we believe.
A few words from Yosemite historian John Capwell on John Muir's legacy and his gift to future generations.
Cross the rivers far.
It is a wonderful experience and allows you to renew your inner spirit and come to appreciate the beauty that nature has to offer, especially in a place such as Yosemite National Park, one of the most spectacular of the system that we have here in America. John Muir was very interested in making sure that the natural beauty of parks such as Yosemite National Park would be maintained for all to enjoy, including future generations. And when he met with President Roosevelt, that was one of the main things he pointed out to him, and apparently he made an impression on the president because during his tenure as president, much of America's beautiful lands and scenic areas were set aside for all of us to enjoy now and in the future.
Muir inspired Roosevelt and future generations to create 18 national monuments, 55 wildlife refuges, and 150 national parks around the country. All of these things happened after the trip, and President Theodore Roosevelt saved more wildland than any other president in history. John Muir spent the rest of his life in Martinez, California with his wife and 2 daughters, where he continued to fight for the parks, reflect on his journeys, and write books. Muir's contributions will protect and preserve forever. His famous Sierra Club still exists and is actively fighting for what John Muir believed for. The parks are still thriving and preserved, ready for future generations to cherish and fight for as well. People across the country love the parks and care about their needs, which was not like it was in Muir's time, where people would rather use the park's resources.
How men cut the forest, move the earth.
Without Muir's leadership, the parks would never be what they are today. They would not have sufficient protection, and greedy people would take advantage of their wood and natural springs. Muir would constantly fight to keep them safe, and it was an eternal battle. Can you imagine the parks like this? Congested, overcrowded, filthy. Without John Muir's leadership and his legacy, this may be a reality. John Muir and Theodore Roosevelt have saved us from this fate. We have the National Park Service and nature refuges that are just like they had in Muir's time, but much more protected. So, every time you look at a sparkling river in a national park, or a pristine mountain range in Yosemite, you should remember the man behind those rivers and mountains. The man behind the national parks, John Muir.
Far and wild, into the forest like a mother to her child. How the canyons and the mountains sing. John Muir's out there if only we believe.